Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Skift Meetings podcast, the podcast for curious event professionals. My name is Andrea Doyle, and I am the executive editor of Skift Meetings. In this episode titled Smile Through the Pain, I have the pleasure of chatting with Monique Ruff-Bell, Chief Program and Strategy Officer for TED Conferences. In this episode, we chat about the importance of teaching girls bravery, not perfectionism, Monique's 80-20 rule, how she focuses on becoming the change she wants to see, how she got into the events industry. We also discuss the magic behind TED, how perseverance and staying focused have been keys to her success, her thoughts on the CMP, why she feels content is king and experience is queen, and the way events have earned respect in the C-suite. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation, and I invite you to check out other episodes of the Skift Meetings podcast with tips and insights from today's most influential event professionals. You can find all the episodes on our website or subscribe through your favorite podcast service.
Now for a word from our sponsors, PHL Life Sciences, a division of the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau. Host your convention or trade show in Philadelphia, one of America's leading life sciences hubs. PHL Life Sciences, the first and only CVB division of its kind, will connect you to the professionals at the forefront of your industry and to a culture you can only find in Philadelphia. A city known for its rich history that's forging a bright future, Philadelphia challenges the expected and defies convention. A world of discovery is waiting. Visit phllife.com to learn more.
Hi, thank you so much for joining me today. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, happy to. I am Monique Ruff-Bell. I am the new Chief Program and Strategy Officer for TED. Previously, I was head of events for TED, and my entire career has been in events and conferences within media, entertainment, publishing, associations, nonprofits, the whole gamut.
Well, first, can you tell us a bit about what the Chief Program and Strategy Officer does?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a new role for TED, and basically is to kind of bring some key growth areas together under one umbrella and really think about not only revenue growth, making sure that we're hitting our mission for those things, as well as what does the future hold for those key verticals. And so having someone who can kind of think about putting this puzzle together and all of these pieces, looking at infrastructure, looking at operations, but also looking at strategy and how do we bring in the right partners for everything we're trying to do? How do we make sure that we're hitting revenue goals? How do we make sure that everything kind of works together seamlessly? So I oversee not only all of our global events, but TEDx, which is our licensing program. That's 3,000 plus events all over the world that happens.
Wow.
I oversee all of our global partnerships so all of our sales, whether it's for our experiences, initiatives, nonprofit partnerships, as well as our digital media, all falls under me now. And then I also oversee our marketing verticals. So how do we make sure that we are branding and driving acquisition for all of those things, plus the other many things we do at TED? People just think about TED as a TED Talk, and we have so many different initiatives. We have the Audacious Project, where we've raised billions of dollars to catalyze other organizations who are looking to change the world. We have TED Ed, where we do programs for teachers and students from grade 5 through 12 with our animation series, as well as our other programs. We have training and courses and leadership academies. We have so many different things that fall under TED that people aren't aware of. So our marketing is a part of all of that. And so making sure that we are feeding into those separate strategies, but also the overall goal of making sure TED is growing.
Wow. When did you join TED?
2 years ago, January 2022.
Wow. That's great. And you said you've been in events your entire career. How did you learn about the events industry? Can you just touch upon, your first introduction?
Yeah, it's a good question because I don't think people just kind of learn about it. You kind of fall into it, is what's been my experience with everyone that I've ever met. So for me, going to college and saying, okay, I want to get a marketing degree, but I don't know what that means, where I'm going to end up or anything like that. And then you get to your third year and it's time for internships. And so I found this internship with this boutique media and events company based out of Manhattan. It was owned by two African American women who weren't much older than me at the time, who kind of started this. And they were doing some really great programs and events for a lot of local organizations. So going in there, you become a jack of all trades because they're young and they're building a business. I'm young. And so it's just like all hands on deck. Everybody does a little bit of everything. So I was raising money in sponsorship. I was doing operations. I was pitching for PR. I was just doing all of these things and had such a great experience that I said, okay, well, I didn't know this world existed, but I think I'm good in this world. So I want to make sure I continue to kind of progress here. And so my first full-time job after that internship was with Ringling Brothers and Disney on Ice as a promotion coordinator for the Northeast. So actually following the circus east. And, I have an interesting story because people don't understand with the circus when they used to have animals, elephants can't go on trucks or anything like that. And so we used to have to be a part of walking the elephants from the train station to the different venues for the circus. And we were like their buffers, like the guards for these animals. Like my little 21-year-old self, a buffer for anything is crazy. And used to have really interesting people who love the animals. And then you had a lot of protests that were happening, all right? And you were like hearing all of this stuff happening while you're walking beside an elephant and a tiger cage and horses through the streets of Manhattan at 1 a.m. to get to Madison Square Garden. So it was just like, it was fun. It was interesting. And then from there, I went to, I was a 23-year-old running promotions at Bridal Guide magazine, literally traveling the country, telling people how to plan weddings at 23. It's like, are you crazy? And then I got married at 23, but it's like, I've had such interesting, fun, different type of job experiences that just kind of kept me in this industry.
Gosh, I love the way you draw the picture of you guarding the elephants.
Yes. It was more than just me. It was a lot of us, but I was on that line. So it is what it is.
So like this was your first introduction to events and led your way to TED. Did you know right away when you were working with that company, when you were in college, like this is an industry for me?
Yeah, I knew because I love the end goal of having the event and just getting that payout for yourself that you've done a good job. You've brought all of this together. You've brought all of these people together. I was working in a lot of celebrity events. So as a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, and you're around this world of celebrities, you're like, this is amazing. I'm going to parties, hosting these parties with the media company and just doing so many wonderful things so young. Of course you're going to be pulled into like, I need to keep going and keep doing this. This is fun. And then I got to some jobs that were not so fun like that, but I kept going and was really happy to be in the industry.
So you explained like the breadth of TED. How often are you on site for TED events and TED conferences?
So all of our flagship conferences. So you have TED conferences and events, and then you have TEDx
Okay.
events. So two different buckets. And so for our TED, meaning we've arranged it from corporate or organization, did all the planning or whatever, I go to all of those. For TEDx, I pick a couple of TEDx events to attend every year. Usually it's the bigger ones with thousands of people or whatever. And I go to see kind of what's new, what are they doing that maybe we can bring into, they come to our events, the organizers from TEDx, to learn from us, but sometimes we can learn from them, right? So, we go there to kind of make connections, also to see how well the TEDx events are going, as well as making sure if they're doing something that's new and unique in events, maybe we can kind of learn from each other. So I do about a handful of those.
So, I mean, TED revolutionized the industry. I mean, got rid of podiums, shortened the length of keynotes, just really changed things for the better. What would you say TED's magic is?
I think TED's magic is the type of people that they find to give these fantastic talks. It's not just the usual suspects of you have to be so prominent within your area or in your industry or anything like that. So yes, they showcase some very prominent people, but when you go to these TED conferences, because a majority, I would say 99% of our TED Talks are filmed at our conferences. And so when you go to these conferences and you're sitting there and you think, oh, the prominent speaker is the one I'm most excited about, I want to hear. And you're blown away by these people you've never heard of doing things you've never heard of. You're getting blown away by their storytelling, because that's what we're basically about, is a strong storytelling platform. And you get excited or you get moved. There's tears that happens in these rooms. There's anger that boils up to the surface in these rooms. So you kind of go on this emotional roller coaster. At our biggest conference in Vancouver, which happens every April, there's 80 plus TED Talks that a person sees throughout 5 whole days, right? So you're going through this emotional roller coaster and you're learning so many different things from so many different people. And so I think the magic of that is walking away with knowledge you would have never had unless you've listened to a TED Talk, and then getting it in a way that connects you to the speaker. So how we train the speakers is to make sure there is a connection, that even if I've never heard of some underwater ocean situation that this person is talking about, I still have a connection to the story. I still feel a connection to the person that's telling the story that makes me want to sit there and listen, even though I didn't think I would even be interested in anything like that. That's the specialness of TED.
What is one of your favorite TED Talks?
So I talk about this a lot. So if people have heard me speak, they've heard this name a gazillion times. But it's, Reshma Sujani, Teach Girls Bravery, Not Perfection. And the reason why that resonated with me so much is because I remember coming up within corporate America. I did not grow up in a family that had corporate jobs. People had jobs, that not careers, jobs. And so kind of coming into these environments and not necessarily having training or talking to family who've been in these environments, I had to keep my mouth shut, open my ears more, and really learn more. And you come in with this idea of perfectionism. Like, if I don't have the answer, if I'm not going to say things correctly, if I still have this twang in my voice or in this accent or whatever, I can't string my words together in the way that these other people or whatever, I can't say anything, or I can't go for these different goals or whatever. And what Reshma talks about in her talk is how women are trained to be nice. Women are, from being little girls, be nice, be nice. And how we are trained to make sure that we are supportive, mostly, than leading. And how we kind of are set back to be the stepping stone for others to do what they need to do to accomplish stuff, while we are that support system. But boys are taught bravery. Go out there and try it. If you bump your knee, get up and get it together and be brave, take some risks, do what you need to do. And so when you come into the workforce, you still have those learnings and those teachings in your mind, and you're coming with a deficit compared to men. Because you aren't going for the job unless you are 99% sure you fit all of the tasks. And you're not going to speak up in rooms where you might be the only woman or person of color, or you feel like you don't have the right words to string together to be heard. So you're not going to say anything. So teaching women and girls bravery as a core foundation instead of just being nice, it's important because it helps to elevate you into leadership positions. It helps to elevate you as a person, period, within your own little world. And I really like how she kind of put that talk together, and that really resonated with me because I see it every day as a hiring manager. I see where I look at resumes, and certain resumes don't have anything to do with this job, but they're going for it. And then I have resumes where they fit the criteria 1000% or whatever, but still they don't have a strong voice when they're coming in to kind of interview for it. So I think that really resonated with me.
Where did you hear her speak?
I wasn't at TED at the time when she gave her talk. So I actually was on TED.com and that
Wow.
was the one that really resonated with me.
Wow, what a great story. Huh. And so she really helped you find your voice, it sounds like.
I think I found my voice before then, but I know I'm always going to get this question. And so I wanted to make sure that she was the one that I talked about the most. She was the one that I elevated whenever I have interviews and people are like, what's your favorite TED Talk? Because of course I'm always going to get that or whatever, because I do feel it is a strong message. There is a lot of women in our industry, probably predominantly in our industry. But if you still look at who's leading the industry, it's not necessarily women, and it's definitely not people of color. And so, and Reshma is the person of color. And so I wanted to make sure that I platform those ideas and that talk to people within our industry, because I noticed that immediately when it came to who's leading, who's the strongest voice in our industry, who's the strongest voice in these rooms. And it was no one that looked like me. And so I wanted to make sure I became the change I wanted to see, and became very intentional about my career, making sure that I was seen as a leader within this industry and taking the proper steps and having the proper voice and building the proper brand for that.
So you said you wanted to become the change I wanted to see. Is that a mantra of yours?
Yes. And I teach that too. I have one son. He's currently in college. And, it's really interesting when you talk to parents who sometimes vicariously live through their children, and they say, I want him to be a doctor. I want him to be an engineer. I want him to do this. My mantra was, I want him to be capable, because I knew if you can figure it out, that you were going to be successful, because that is the foundation. And anything that you're doing is, do you have the capability to figure it out, to get through it? Because you will have these tough moments, you will have these tough times. Capability is what I wanted to see in him. And I've really said, you can be the change you want to see. You can't get this goal. You got to keep going. You got to keep trying. Let's keep, looking at it different ways. Like I always say, there's different roads to Main Street. This road might not have worked. We'll go down another one. But all I want to see is your capability, that you have the wherewithal to process and to understand and to think and to strategize about how you're going to move forward in life. That was the most important for me, not necessarily the role he was pursuing.
Well, that's beautiful.
Thanks.
If you were to give a TED Talk, what would the overarching theme be?
I've had this question before too, and it's how to smile through the pain. So I'm up, and the reason why I chose that is because, I've had a lot of wonderful, wonderful experiences and opportunities and met wonderful people, but I've also gone through a lot of different things in my life, with very important people dying when I was younger, or kind of not having a voice in the room of certain things. I just recently put a post up where I talked about my reaching goals. And one of the things that I said was, I came into this industry in 1999. I didn't get serious about being intentional about where I wanted my career to go until 2012. And I had my biggest career milestone in 2018. So that means it took 19 years of going through what I went through, being overlooked, being underpaid, being dismissed, being discounted, dealing with biases, to kind of continue to move through some of those struggles to get to where I am today. And so I just think it's important to know that success isn't overnight. Success can look very different for different people. People are coming to the table with different life experiences, but you can still make it. And so sometimes I had to smile through the pain to keep going and to make it. So that's why I said that would be my TED Talk.
Where did you learn such perseverance?
I think I did not feel like I had any other choice. I don't think I had I was in an environment where I could rest without pursuing goals or being focused on what I needed to do my own version of success. Like I said, everybody's success looks very different for everybody else. My own version of success meant I needed to stay focused. I needed to learn how to play chess, not checkers. I needed to know how to show up in a room. I needed to understand how to ask for access because they weren't going to give it to me. And I needed to stay the course. And so I didn't feel like I had any other choice.
And have you always been so goal oriented and have that wherewithal to continue to persevere?
I think in my younger days, in a different type of way, I think I became much more serious. Like I said in 2012, like I was the person that I have the vision boards. I'm that person. You know what I'm saying? I do it. I change it up every year or two or whatever. So absolutely, when I got older, I became more determined. But of course, some of that had to live in me since I was younger, right? So my mother was a single parent. She worked two jobs for 30 years. Like you had to learn how to take care of yourself a little bit and, you know, to stay the course if you wanted to accomplish and not have a life where you have to work a job, two jobs or anything like that. So I think that that's always probably lived in me. I just, the older I got, the more determined I got.
Who has had the biggest influence?
I think it's two people. You're going to laugh when I tell you the other person. But the first person is, of course, my mother. She has such a strong work ethic. I never wanted for anything. I was always supported. I can tell you, you know, my mother recently passed last year. And I can tell you, out of the 66 years that she lived, we've had two arguments.
Wow.
So there was like a lot of love there and a lot of support there. So I appreciate it. And she let me be me. There was no, there was no push and pull for me to be anything else but myself. She was just like, oh, that's just Monique. You know, that's just my daughter. Whatever it is, it is. She'll get through it.
But it sounds
The
like you're honoring her legacy with the way you're raising your son.
I hope so. I really do hope so. That was his best friend. He always said his grandma was his first best friend. And so the second person is, you're gonna laugh, but as an 8-year-old, I used to watch Dynasty, and there was a woman named Dominique Devereaux that was on Dynasty. Why is an 8-year-old watching Dynasty? Because I could. It was really like I decided to do that, and she was this amazing, beautiful Black woman who I've never seen anyone like that before in my life. I'll never forget it. And I remember watching her being a boss and being a force and how she spoke and how she walked and how she carried herself. And then I remember like I started to play work with Barbies and like Ken was my chauffeur and I became Dominique Devereaux with my Barbies and I was traveling the world and I was doing all of this stuff. And so that really resonated. Like I always say, like representation matters. And that really planted something in me as a little girl to say, that exists. I can do that and not just have a job. You know, it's like, so I would say like she was the second biggest motivator for me to really think about my life in a very different way.
Well, that's great. How important is mentoring to you?
So I do a lot of mentoring, but I also do sponsorship. And so sponsorship and mentorship was huge in my career trajectory. Mentorship because I still had those African American women who started that little boutique agency in my life to this day
Wow.
as friends. And so, you know, if I had any problems or challenges, and then there's been other wonderful leaders that I've had. I've had some not so wonderful ones, but I've had some really great ones as well. And I've leaned on them for mentorship. But I had a sponsor. And so his name is Josh Brous, and I always love to sing his praises because once I found out how he had access to certain things, I was intentional about making sure that we connected and he saw the good work I could bring to the table. And then when he would leave a job or move around, he would remember me and he would bring me into that next job. And I would be very specific about asking for certain things. I was specific about asking for more money. I was specific about the title that I wanted, and I was specific about the access that I needed, because I knew I needed to grow my skill set in a particular way for myself to look like a leader. And he did it. He was open to it. He knew I always did good work. He really kind of got the benefit of a lot of the good work that I brought to the table as a leader himself. And he took me to 4 jobs with him. And every single job, I would ask for very specific things. And I was granted those very specific things. And I don't think I would have been able to become what I have become if I didn't have that training ground and I wasn't intentional and I didn't ask for what I needed to grow into my career. So I not only benefited from mentorship, I absolutely benefited from sponsorship. And I do the same with my half a dozen mentees as well.
So, and did you connect with him at a job originally?
I did. I did.
That's a great story. What does a typical day look like for you?
Well, in this new role, it's a lot coming at me. So I'm right in a transition period, right? So I have several new departments that are now reporting under me. And so I told those departments, there's nothing I really want you to change, because I need to understand your day-to-day, what is working, what's some of the challenges, what's some of the holes, what's the infrastructure. So I'm on this journey, like I like to call it my Beyonce listening tour. I'm on this journey of listening and understanding before I need to necessarily put my tentacles on anything yet. There's some quick wins, absolutely, where I could say, okay, well, let's think about doing it this way. Let's try this, blah, blah, blah. That happens immediately. But there's also a point where you have to take your time to understand how to properly lead and manage these very different departments. And so right now I'm getting a lot of strategy decks. I'm getting a lot of background information on things. Running events, which I've always, been managing for 2 years, is now like a well-oiled machine. But when I came into TED, it took me 6 months before I did a restructure, because I really wanted to understand things before I made any of those changes. And it really paid off, because I wanted to take the team on the journey with me. I didn't want them to think that here's somewhere, because they've been with TED for a long time. A lot of these people, they've been there for 7, 14, 20 years, a long time. And you just can't be new and just come shaking up stuff without them really understanding the why. And so I wanted to make sure I built relationships, did a journey, had them come in, take their opinion into account before I made any big changes. And so that's the same journey that I'm going on with these other areas. So it's just a lot of intake, as well as preparing for our big flagship in April, our other big flagship in October, plus our other smaller events that are happening regionally.
And I find it interesting what you said, that you're helping them understand the why. That's really important, isn't it?
Absolutely. If you want to get people inspired and motivated and supportive, context is everything. And you just don't do things without them understanding the why first, and it has to make sense. And when it makes sense to them, they're all for it. And so that's what I try to do all the time.
How many people are on your team?
Oh my God. So originally was 40, but I'm way past that. So I haven't done a count, but I think I'm like at 100. It has to be like fully like between these several different departments or whatever, but a lot of people, let's say that.
With such responsibilities, how do you maintain work-life balance?
I've always been a person that was very good at having boundaries. And so how did I come to having really good boundaries is I remember being at a job and working so hard to show my value. And when I asked for a little $5,000 raise, they told me no. And I said, I've damn near killed myself to do all of this stuff. And only thing I've gotten was more work. And so I was like, this ain't the way to live. This can't be life. And so what I need to do is put some boundaries around myself, because nobody's going to care about me other than me. No one's going to care if I sleep. No one's going to care if I eat. No one's going to care if I'm rested or I've had moments to myself. I'm going to come to the table broken. And that is not going to favor me in any way, because I'm already dealing with challenges to even get into these leadership positions. So if I don't want to come to the table broken, I'm going to have to take care of myself. And so, like, of course, in this role, there's times where you do have to kind of do a little bit more than what you're used to, but that is not my day to day all the time. And I make sure, like, around 6 o'clock, I'm done. And on weekends are mine. And I take all of my vacation days and I call my boss and tell him I need a mental health day today. And, I've said that a couple of times here and there in different roles or whatever, because I'm not shy about saying, I'm overwhelmed, I need a break. And so I'll say that out loud if I need to. And I'm really clear about taking care of myself. And I do that.
That's great.
Are you ready to celebrate your successes in the world of meetings and events? The Skift Meetings Awards are back for 2024, recognizing the most innovative business events companies across 15 categories, and we want you to be a part of it. Winners will feature on Skift Meetings, sending a clear signal to events professionals around the world that these are partners they can rely on. The final deadline for submissions is June 11th. We encourage you to start your submission today to secure the best entry rates. For more information and to start your submission, head to live.skift.com.
Have industry associations played a role in your career?
In a way of, I worked for an association, so I got to learn the ins and outs of how you have to do so much more with so much less. So that was a good training ground for me. I go to some association events, so it's always great to network with people who are in our industry. So I look at it more as for myself. Other people might use it in different ways, from education and all of that good stuff. But I use it more for networking purposes.
And are designations like the CMP important to you?
So I told you that when you sent this question, that was a little spicy for me. And the reason why is because I do like the fact that if you are new in the industry and or you're interested in learning from leaders fairly quickly about the industry, that going through that type of course is absolutely wonderful and a great way to do that. When I was looking for myself, just speaking for myself personally about that, I looked to see, because it's an investment as well. And so I looked to see the leaders that I saw running the type of events that I wanted, did they have that designation? And they didn't. And so I said, okay, so there is still an opportunity for me to continue to grow in my career. But I'm probably going to learn more, get more out of the world of hard knocks than just being in a room and kind of getting some of this good information. But, when you're younger, you don't have the money to do that, you're going to do what you need to do to just kind of learn and get skill sets and be intentional and stuff like that. So I think when I was younger, if I had the money, I probably would have got the designation, but I didn't at the time. And so I wanted to, and now I heard there's scholarships and other ways that you could do this. But at the time I wasn't aware of that. And so I just continued on my trajectory. And I think with certain leaders who kind of stumble into this industry, who then become leaders of the industry, they're not really conscious of asking for that designation. I think other people who have the designation will ask, who will probably prop up more people with the designation because they've been through it. But for me, it hasn't necessarily been a deterrent not to have it. And it actually hasn't even, I've never been asked about it in any interview I've ever had for any job about that designation as well.
What past event or career highlights are you particularly proud of?
Money 2020, I have to say, because when I came into being the event leader for Money 2020, which I think was 2018, 2017, 2018, I think 2018, it was on a downward trajectory in every single way, from revenue, attendance, sponsorship. It just was losing its way and its momentum. And when I came in, and, I always appreciate Tracy, who's the president of Money 2020, because I didn't come in with big trade show experience. And there were 500 applicants for this particular job. And then it came down to like the last 6. And I'm pretty sure some of those people had big show trade experiences and I didn't. And she took a chance on me to bring me in. And so I knew I wanted to prove that I was worth the chance. And so making sure that I covered all of the challenge areas and really was thinking how we can be different, how we can be put the fun in fintech, and how we can make sure that, I'm a part of those conversations with some of those sponsors, because I'm going to bring the thunder in the room. I'm going to be excited. I'm going to be smiling big. I'm going to be doing all the things to get them excited about partnering with us, and how we're going to use data and how we're going to use metrics. And it was on an upward swing immediately. And so just to know that I got to contribute in that way, and it continues to be in an upward swing, even once after I left, it was like, no one has ever been to a finance show that was that much fun, that was that much business opportunity and making it easier to do business at that show. And so I was just pretty proud to lead such a fabulous team and for us to do things way more different than any finance show has ever seen.
Wow, that's great. How can you tell if an event, say Money, that show, or even a TED show, was a success? Is it all about measuring ROI, or are there other signs you look for?
Yeah, so I think it's a couple of signs. Of course, it's your NPS score. Of course, it's how you hit your revenue goals. Of course, it's how you hit your retention. That matters a lot to me, for the simple fact it costs more to get new business and new people to experience something. So the higher our retention rate, the better it is from a cost efficiency standpoint for me. It is about how much people talk about it on social. So I actually care about the engagement, because you really should be creating FOMO with your event experiences. So it could be more attractive to bring in more people to kind of come. You put all of this hard work in an event, you want as many people as possible to experience it. So that matters. Your anecdotal stories, like everybody coming to the table when we do our post wrap-up report, and to hear the stories that other people have heard from attendees or whatever, and hear the positive momentum. I've never been to anything like this. This was the best, show or conference I've ever been to, blah, blah, blah. To hear all of that, of course, you're going to hear some of your negatives, but to know a majority of it is mostly positive or whatever. So I take all of that into account on how successful an event is, not just the NPS, not just the revenue, but a whole slew. How are our exhibitors, how are our partners feeling? Did they get the ROI they were looking for? Do they have the data? Do we have enough case studies to actually showcase that on our website? Video that we take, are we creating that and putting that on our website? So all of that stuff matters to me.
And how do you create engagement?
In various ways, but is there any specific group you're talking about?
Like, so for that event, you talked about, you check social media to make sure people are engaged, and there's FOMO. How, like, where do you start to make sure people are engaged? Because sometimes I think there's so much focus on content that there could be less focus on engagement, which sometimes isn't the way to do it. It's a balance, isn't it?
Well, that's the evolution of our event. Like, people still say content is king. And I say, if content is king, experience is queen. And that is just as powerful as the content, right? And so you have to really create an experience that people want to talk about. And so how do you create an experience people want to talk about? You start with the foundation, emotion. How do you create an emotive experience with your events? How do you make sure there is something where someone feels delighted or surprised or happy or whatever? I take it to the very basics in that way. So there's these different pillars that you think about when it comes to an event journey. You have your intrigue, where you get people excited about coming to your event. Then you have your arrival experience. Then you have your exploration experience, your participation experience, your exit experience, and then how do you keep the momentum going with your extend experience? And so, putting it up in these bite-sized pieces, and then think about the emotions that we want people to have when they go through each of those pillars. So arrival, surprise and delight, to see something they never thought they would see just walking through the door. And so they're going to pull out their phones. We're living in the times where people, if they see something they never thought they would see, or they're delighted or surprised, or they're having a great time, they want to show it to their friends, their community, their network. They want to take out that phone. They want to talk about it. They want to post about it and all of that good stuff. So that's how you get your engagement going. It's not about what's happening in the room when someone is talking at them. It's about the entire journey with your event, and what are you doing to create different type of emotional experiences that connect with them, that make them want to talk about this connection. And so that's kind of what we always think about when we're putting our events together.
What is your proudest accomplishment?
That I have reached many of the career goals that I wanted to reach because of my intention, because of my focus, because of my work ethic, because I have built wonderful relationships with people who in a heartbeat will step up for me, and I would do the same for them. And whether it's a relationship, the Money 2020 relationship that, how I even got in the door with Money 2020 was someone that I met at Cannes Lions in 2012. I didn't start Money 2020 until 2018. Nurturing that relationship for 5 years and having that. And then when that job came in, that person being in that organization going to the president directly and saying, you have to talk to Monique. I've known her for such and such years. She would be great for this job. Like I said, I didn't have trade show experience like that. And he opened the door for me to have this conversation with someone and then to be considered and to get the job, right? So nurturing relationships, I think has been extremely important for me. And just the support of many people in the industry who know that I get it, I understand it, and whatever, just being so supportive of me in my journey. I think I'm just most proud of surviving and, being really content with where I'm at and enjoying, the challenges that I get to enjoy as a leader.
That's wonderful. So let's imagine you are planning an event for 100 Moniques. What would this event look like?
It has to have food, good food, because Monique like to eat. That's what we're going to start off with, the most important thing. So what is the food experience that's happening at this event?
So fabulous food.
Fabulous food, and she loves seafood. So let's make sure we do all the things with all the seafood that we can think of.
Lots of towers.
Yeah. And make sure you got matching wine to go with that, because Monique likes her wine. Like I said, the whole food and beverage experience has to be top notch. I think also bringing people to the table to teach Monique how to continue to level up and to evolve and be better and be stronger and continue to be resilient. And they talk about it in a real way, not theory. I want to hear what you've been through, what you've done, how you've been able to do things. What can the nuggets that I'm going to be able to get from you? And then a lot of parties, because Monique likes to be social. She likes to talk. She likes to connect, all of that good stuff. So I think food, great quality content, and some great parties is the typical event that Monique would enjoy.
Well, please sign me up. I'd love to touch upon trends. What trends looking forward are you most excited about?
Technology, continuing to see how technology is going to evolve our business, how we're going to properly use AI. And when I say, properly, ethically use AI and really think about how it plugs into our day-to-day in a way that enhances what we do, not necessarily just takes away jobs. And so kind of thinking about how do we create these symbiotic, immersive experiences digitally as well as in person. In person is the heart, I think, for any event. I don't care what we do online or virtually. There's nothing that can replace that in real life type of experience. But digital can complement that, technology can complement that. And so I'm just really looking forward to kind of see what is going to be created to make it different and less boring and not as just a Zoom call and all of this other kind of stuff that's kind of coming from a technological advancement.
And learnings from the COVID pandemic, were there any silver linings?
Yeah, much more of us got much more resilient. Much more of us really started to get better language on how we can keep the momentum with our senior leaders of how they need to continue to host these programs, keep them going, how we were able to use the dreaded word pivot that we've used a zillion times in this when we're talking about COVID, and how we were able to bounce back post-COVID. Like we must have set up a very strong foundation during COVID to make people even want to come back even more post-COVID to our in-person experiences or whatever. So, one of the things I recently was talking about in another interview is that I think leaders, especially the C-suite, started to look at us a little bit differently. And it's not just about, which I hate when people think it's just about the planning, party planning. It's just about the execution, logistics or whatever. No, no, no. We run very valuable business lines. And we have to think about, it's like having our own little business where we have to think about marketing and sales and logistics and operations and efficiencies and everything like that. Now I think they're starting to see the event professional in the way we've always should have been seen, as business strategists and strong business operators and owners. And I think the pandemic, hopefully, I know in some of the areas I was in, other leaders within those organizations started to see, well, they kept it going. They were really strong. They still brought in revenue. They still and you couldn't have events and all of this other stuff. So I think we were hopefully looked at more in a much more positive and stronger light because of the pandemic.
I mean, for many, the pandemic kind of came from left field, and I wanted to touch upon challenges. Are there any challenges that keep you up at night?
No, I sleep well.
Okay.
Boundary. I think there's always challenges in everything that we do. Like now, if you come from an area where you continue to have double-digit growth, there is a cap to that where it gets harder and harder to continue to get double-digit growth or whatever. And so how do you kind of keep momentum going in that way? Making sure, things are so much more expensive, as we all know. And so you don't always get a bigger budget because things are more expensive. And so another thing I talk about is cost efficiencies versus event investment, and having the language to be able to explain the difference to your leaders. Because an investment pays you back, and a cost efficiency saves you money. And sometimes you have to put more money in that will eventually pay us back by doing this, and really being very clear about how do you talk about that to your leaders so that they understand when you're asking for more money, it's going to produce Y for us in the next 2 years, 3 years, or whatever. And talking about it in that way, because they understand investment language. They really do. And so getting your language together with that is really important. So I think continuing to refine language to talk to the C-suite, getting our budgets together, dealing with inflation, continuing, your growth journey, all of that are challenges that I have to deal with day to day. Does not keep me up at night because I like to sleep.
Is stress a challenge?
I think I have moments of stress, but I have been very good about compartmentalizing things, and really just understanding that I'm not saving lives here. I do, event programs. I help drive revenue. I have really good relationships with usually my CEOs and my presidents, that they understand that I'm putting in the effort to make sure this works out. There's risks that come with everything. Everything doesn't always work out. But if you see the effort and you see the wins, and we got that 80-20 rule where 80% is going over the line and 20% might not be, they feel good about the 80% and they understand that there's movement and positive movement happening. So I don't believe in perfectionism. I don't believe I'm always going to knock it out of the park. I always ask my managers at the beginning of the year, what is your expectations? I want us to be on the same page. So I make them sit down and think about it and write it out of what they're looking for out of me for the year. And we have a conversation about it and agree to it. And then I'm off and running. And so there is no gray areas here. We both understand each other. That helps immensely when it comes to you being stressed out about something, because I'm managing up to your expectations. We had a conversation. We're clear about where we're trying to get to this year. So
That's a
all good.
brilliant idea.
Yes.
And have you done that throughout your career?
No, I started to do that at Money 2020 because it was so big. So it's just like, you got so many moving parts. You got so many things you have to stay on top of. I need to know what is your priorities here and what is it that I need to make sure that you're going to be happy with and stuff like that. So it really kind of started there and moved into TED, because when you are juggling so much, everything becomes important, and that's just not possible. And so I wanted to have clarity on what is it that you need, what is I'm looking to bring to the table, do they match, do they not match? We're going to have that conversation in January, so that we don't need this conversation for the rest of the year.
And is that when you came up with the 80-20 rule?
Now, I've carried the 80-20 rule even before Money 2020, because like I said, there was a point in my career where I was doing all of this work and not getting what I needed to, and I was like, I'm killing myself to be, the highest, best leader, performer, manager, worker, and nothing is coming out of it. And so if I can get the 80-20 rule, which is a life mantra for myself, if I can get 80% over the line, I am winning in my eyes. And so that is what I'm going to kind of bring to the table in everything that I do.
When did that idea first come to you?
When I was in that job and I asked for that $5,000 and they told me no.
Wow. So look, I mean, at the time you probably were crushed, but what a wonderful thing came out of it.
I think every challenge, and I believe me, I've had my challenges within this industry, has made me stronger, more resilient. I have much more grit. And I learned from it. And so I never say, oh, I regret, or I should have. No, it happened the way it was supposed to happen because it made me who I am for today. And so I'll take it because I think I'm doing all right. And so, yeah, out of that situation, I was like, if I can get 80% over the line, I am winning.
What does grit mean to you?
Understanding that there is going to be tough times, curveballs, surprises that are not positive. And as long as I can stay calm and be thoughtful through it, so I can keep a clear brain to figure out how to solve whatever that is, and there's no perfectionism in my vocabulary, so I'm going to do my best, and they're going to know it's my best. And if in the end it still doesn't work out in the way, I have no regrets about it. It's a learning situation for myself. And so having grit is to know that you can get through it and be capable. Like I said, I like to, teach my son that it's about capability. Like I was capable to move through this, get through it, whether it's successful or not, and it didn't break me. That's grit to me.
And do you look for these same qualities in your team members?
I look for capability. I have very good, high-performing team members. But everybody doesn't think the way that I think, and that's okay. And everybody doesn't do everything the way that I do things, and that's okay as well. I think in the same way that I think about my son is capability. Like if you're gonna fall to pieces in events where there is nothing but fires behind the scene, nothing is 100% going right all the time or whatever, and you're gonna fall to pieces every time that happens, this is not the industry for you. And I'm going to help you find the industry that should be working for you a little bit better than staying here and dealing with that.
What advice can you give someone just starting out in the industry?
So another story quickly. So I was a person when I came into this industry that I wanted to try different roles. So I was an operations logistics person. I was a meeting planner. I did marketing. I did sponsorship coordination, and I found my niche in programming content. And so then I started to just continue to do programming content for a while. I love the fact that I did all of those different roles because now I learned what it takes to put a successful event together. I know the challenges that come with each of those roles. I know how to think about when I'm planning and leading these very different departments, what will help motivate them to be stronger within their area. And I wouldn't have known the ins and outs unless I, worked in those individual ways. When I was looking for a job one time, a recruiter said, "You moved around too much. You should have just stayed with one area and then grew your career. How am I supposed to, if you want to do operations, yeah, you did it here, but you've done this, this, this. Maybe, you need to figure that out. You need to just do one thing." And I was like, yeah, no, I'm happy with what I got to experience. I've learned something immensely from each of those different roles or whatever, but that could have crushed me because I was still young when I was kind of moving around a little bit. And for like, you move around too much. And the way they even said it, it's like, oh man, or whatever. So I feel like coming into the events, try different things, figure out what works for you. In the end, it was content programming that really worked for me. I love doing research. I love bringing speakers together, and I love doing content. And that became my niche. But it was good to have all that other background to become a stronger leader of an events team, understanding the ins and outs of those different roles.
If you could change one thing in the events industry, what would that be?
Representation, having more diverse leadership. People kind of, you can get burnt out in this industry. And I know that. I know during the pandemic, a lot of people left or whatever. And I remember giving this talk, I think it was post-pandemic. And this woman who was a marketing manager was like, I was about to quit. I was over events. And your talk was so positive and motivating. And I just want to kind of keep going and keep trying and stuff like that. And that really kind of touched me because it was like, this is resonating. My journey is resonating with people in the way that I want that. Yes, there is these times where you're tired and burnt out or whatever, but you can get through it. And it's a really fun industry and it's really great. And it's a viable career. And you can make money here and you can learn a lot. You can learn how to be a real great leader and change things and do diverse things and whatever. So more people kind of who having the background that I have, who look like me, bringing those people to the table to have those conversations with the up and comers to say, stay the course, you can do this, it's a viable career, it's all great. We need to talk more about that.
What is the one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
Would they be surprised that I love karaoke? Would you think you would be surprised if you didn't know?
We're going to add that to the Monique event.
I have my staple. My first song is always a Wham song for karaoke. I think that's the surprising thing.
Yeah,
People don't know that
you as a Wham fan.
Wham fan. I sing a Wham song as my first song all the time. And so I think that would be the thing that people are most surprised. They might not be surprised that I'm a karaoke queen, but that I always like to kick it off with Wham.
So unfortunately, that's about all the time we have, but we like to wrap up our podcasts by asking who should be our next guest and what should we ask them?
Have you ever had Nicola Kastner on your call? Are you familiar with her?
Yeah, we had a session together because
that's right. That's where I met her. Duh.
She came to your TED, right?
She came to the TED for the first time. And I don't know if you ever had a one-to-one with her or whatever, but even just, I love to hear how she talks about TED, like her first experience or whatever. So I would love for you to get her on here so she could talk about her first TED experience and what did she think about it. But she's just such a powerful force in the industry. She's, she has her own consulting business now, and she is such a thought leader or whatever. And so I know your listeners will get a lot out of having a one-to-one conversation with her.
I remember hearing you talk, and she was so taken by your name badges at TED because
she was.
Can you explain? It says what you're interested in, right? Or what your hobby is?
Yeah, it's it's basically a conversation starter. And so, what is the thing that you want people to know, to ask you? What would you like someone else to ask you?
And
So
you
in
were
my badge, it
macaroni
said,
and cheese, right?
you got it. That was it, or whatever.
We'll
And
have that
so
at the Monique event too. Really
that,
fabulous mac and cheese.
and she loved the fact that we don't queue lines. And so we have a couple of thousand people that come to our event, and there is no lines when you come to register. And so we have it set up in a particular way where we have this in-house technology, which helps when someone walks through the door, they're approached. And when they get up the escalator, someone's already waiting with their badge and their bag. And there is literally no line and no one waiting around in any long lines. And this is for like 2,000 plus people that come to our Vancouver conference. So she was blown away by that too. So there was a couple of things that she was like blown away when it comes to our experience.
So I will definitely reach out to her, but what an accolade for you, for an event strategist to pay to attend an event to see how it's done.
Absolutely. I love that she was there. We had dinner together. I hosted a dinner there for about 100 people, and she was there, and she was at my my table. So we had a really good time.
Well, this has been wonderful. I so enjoyed our conversation.
Same.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And I wish you all the best in your new role.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me.